Okay, well, welcome to the November 9th meeting, 2023 of the Hillcrest Neighborhood Council. I'm Jan Hemming, I'm the chair, and we're pleased to have two special guests tonight, Jasmine Walton and Ellen Erickson, who will be speaking to us later. And then we're also pleased to have our city council representative, Dan Dugan. And I don't see Hannah, but oh, Hannah, thank you. Great you're here. And then we will hear from Detective Fallows in a little bit. I just have three little quick announcements before we get started with Jasmine. First of all, before I even do that, would all of our council members stand up and just go ahead and stand up so we can see that you're here, and we appreciate your involvement. We've got Eric Dyer, we've got Stuart Bevan, Eric Pavlis, Jennifer Evans, and Tim Ermish. So thank you so much for coming, and thanks to the rest of you for being here as well, and those of you that are online. Just wanted to make a few quick announcements now. The LHD proposal on Princeton Avenue passed last night, 5-3 by the Planning Commission. It was close, but it got through, and we're just so pleased with it. Very passionate and thoughtful commentary from the residents on Princeton. And Tim, thank you. I know your friend here spoke as well. And Suzanne, thank you. Thank you very much. We had a number of speakers, and they were just phenomenal, and I think it very persuasive. So we're pleased with that. That will go before the city council in early of 2024. Yeah, there'll be a residential vote first, and then the same thing will happen to the Laird Avenue LHD. So that was before the Planning Commission in September, but both of those will be before the city council in early 2024. And we've had a chance to talk with Dan and Anna Baldemoris. We had a Zoom meeting with some of the residents, and that I thought went very well. Thank you, Dan, for helping to facilitate and be supportive on that. You all know, you've probably received ballots. The 2023 election's underway. Just fill them out and get them in. The deadline's November 21st. So we hope too that Jasmine, you're going to mention Rake Your Heart Out, because I was kind of been promoting it in some of our newsletters, that it's a wonderful event that NeighborWorks does every year so that we can come over and rake leaves. So that'll be Saturday, November 18th. And then one last thing, just put it in your calendar. We do the annual Nativity in the Glen, and it's a wonderful, really, I think, Salt Lake City event. I think we get people from all over who like to come over. That's going to be November 28th from 6 to 9. So just kind of put that in your calendar. I'm pleased to introduce Jasmine Walton. And Jasmine, please fill in all of the blanks. I can't praise her enough. We get to talk with Jasmine every month because she coordinates with all the other chairs of the community councils our meetings. So we all get together as different chairs, and Jasmine is the spark behind that, but she has another illustrious life that with NeighborWorks and has been very instrumental in the success that they've had. And I'm just a little familiar, Jasmine, with some of the things that NeighborWorks has done. You're going to fill us in on all of it, but really a remarkable history of changing the city, improving the city, making it better, and the success you had in Guadalupe and some other great stories that I hope you're going to tell us tonight. And then the ongoing things that you're doing in the community just to build the human capital, I think, of some of our neighborhoods. So please, if you would, tell us a little bit more about yourself, because I don't know your whole illustrious history, but if you would do that, we would appreciate it. Thank you, Jasmine.
Thanks everyone for having me. As Jan said, I'm Jasmine Walton. I'm the Director of Community Initiatives and Marketing for NeighborWorks Salt Lake. We just turned 46 years old last week. That seems like so far away, but it was only last Wednesday. And we originally actually started in the 9th and 9th neighborhood, and that's where we first kind of got a dose of how to really revitalize neighborhoods, and we learned a lot from that. And left behind actually the Elko Community or Neighborhood Council. And so as a way to continue making sure that neighbors were involved and active in their city and the processes that happened. And then we moved to the west side in the early 90s. But I can talk forever about NeighborWorks. Oh, I'm maybe not in the frame, sorry. I can talk a lot about the history of NeighborWorks, but it's much more fun to watch it in a video. So we're gonna try and play this video for you all that kind of gives a history, and bear with me, it's a few minutes long. Let me just see if I want to play just this. Make that really big. Lots of practice. Actually I need to stop this because that didn't work the way I thought it was going to. Share screen is paused, exit full screen. Maybe I'm not as good at this as I thought I was. Oh, yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's try this one more time. Maybe I will do the full screen. Okay, cool. Are you guys seeing that?
Homes were just starting to be unmaintained. And the decline of the commercial area, it had become seedy.
People were coming in and, buying up the home, putting in a fourplex.
We were notified that we had blight and we needed to do something about our blight.
And I thought, I just put down earnest money for a house and I'm not sure what's going to happen to my neighborhood.
There used to be a horrible situation of redlining to prevent loans that would lead to improvements in the neighborhood.
If you wanted to stay in the neighborhood and you needed help fixing up your home, what resources did you have?
So I was sitting on my porch and a couple from down the street walked by and said there was a meeting at their house.
Lenders were there, as well as some citizens, as well as city staff were there, all in effect listening.
And they needed a third partner. They needed the residents of the community to be a partner with them and to be actively involved in what was going to happen.
And that night we created committees, and I was the chair of community outreach. Didn't know what that meant, but that's what it was.
And it was people working together to do all sorts of things. Painting each other's houses, helping clean houses. There were some places that were pretty bad.
It brought the neighbors together. One of the lenders moved into the neighborhood.
It allowed me to get acquainted with members of the community that I hadn't known before.
We went to the city commission at the time and asked them to rezone the neighborhood. And that was our feeble start.
I think it doesn't work without partnerships, in effect, especially with the lenders and with the cooperation of the people who live in the neighborhoods. If you get everybody attuned, it works about as good as anything I've ever seen work.
We didn't just become partners, we worked together as friends to improve our community, and we loved each other.
In my early years, it was really all about home ownership, and as they say, rebuilding neighborhoods a block at a time. And you can just drive up and down here and see what they've done to my neighborhood.
A neighborhood is a place of peace and happiness and contentment if it's done right.
So NeighborWorks reaching nearly 5 decades means to me that the founders of this organization, their vision and their commitment to community has come to fruition.
The best part of NeighborWorks Salt Lake is putting families or individuals in their own homes.
NeighborWorks has changed my life by giving me the opportunity to have home ownership.
There is no greater feeling than home ownership.
Home ownership
is connection to community.
To be able to plant your roots and belong somewhere. If you can't buy a home, it's really hard to get yourself out of poverty.
The home buying process was definitely a really daunting one, and without them, I don't know if we would be in our home today.
When I had the hands-on of dealing with the construction managers, made the process and made me feel at ease.
Knowing that the mortgage that we were paying would actually just go back into the neighborhood and give other families an opportunity to buy as well.
Not only does NeighborWorks provide you with the resources for a down payment, it also provides you with the resources of how you manage your money. What does that look like? And identifying what your wants are and what your needs are.
I love that I get to live next to people who look like me in a neighborhood that really feels like community, and like see my dog playing in the backyard is like the best thing in the world to me.
When I first got introduced to NeighborWorks, I was just starting to intersect the juvenile justice system. The WLI fundamentals course was recommended to me.
The Westside Leadership Institute was a course that taught us how to do community organizing and how to learn about our different leadership styles and about how to give different people a voice at the table.
It provided me with information and knowledge to work with people who have similar lived experiences as myself as I get ready to set up my business and benefit and best serve my community. By partnering strategically, we could help each other grow.
This was just as important as beautifying the neighborhood or building homes. It was about developing the assets of the people in the neighborhoods.
And it's built so many leaders. I mean, it's built me. The people in my one class alone became a House of Representatives, City Council, a person that started a publication. All these different great community assets came through being projects at the Westside Leadership Institute.
YouthWorks is a program that targets young people and engages them through a paid work experience in building community.
They had us in the, construction boots and like the purple t-shirts. I learned a lot of just basic life skills that they don't teach in school. Managing your finances, we learned about teamwork, leadership skills, and I've gotten to work for like the Attorney General's office, been in really professional spaces and get great opportunities and just carry myself well and go before our Utah representatives and really use my voice to talk about things that I'm passionate about. Coming from a refugee background and household, a program like YouthWorks is really helpful to be able to kind of bridge that cultural gap.
We also do real estate development, single family and multifamily development with a focus on affordable housing.
An additional line of business that NeighborWorks has been involved with over the last 30 years is economic development, helping future business owners to understand more about business, how to conduct a business, putting a mortgage out on it, or helping them get their inventory in place, whether it's a coffee shop or a hairdresser or different types of business in the community. NeighborWorks has been actively involved in helping to revitalize the neighborhoods that it's involved with.
When I see a home in a neighborhood, it's not just a home. It's a family, it's an investment in community, it's an investment in building families' wealth, it's a legacy for community.
My principal hope is that the residents know that it's their idea that matters the most.
My hopes for NeighborWorks in the future is that we're able to continue this legacy where other families can take root in this community and give back to this community.
I'm hoping that NeighborWorks will continue to reach out to those that are scared to ask for assistance.
Everyone there is genuinely interested in seeing you grow.
So it's been a full circle for me, and I'm still grateful, I'm still involved. And a lot of the people that I grew up with are not here anymore. I'm not going to say that absolutely would have happened to me, but I was certainly at risk for that. I will always have NeighborWorks' back because NeighborWorks is family to me.
The amazing people that are allies to us and help us ultimately get the work done. So usually I tell people there's a test after that, but I won't do that to you all. So you saw a couple of our homeowners there in the video, and a big piece of what we do is we help people get into their first home and also stay in their home. As we start to have folks who are aging and they want to age in place, sometimes we know it's hard to keep up your house, right? Either yard work or keeping it safe and healthy. And so a big piece of what we do is we're able to help homeowners with rehabilitation of their houses, either through grants or through low interest or zero interest loans. So it allows them to be able to basically age in place and stay in their home. And so we have a great team that's able to work with you. They help you find the contractors. They help you walk through those contracts that they give you too, and then keep the project on task. Because if you've ever done a home improvement project in your house, you know how crazy and how difficult sometimes it can be to navigate those. So our team's great about helping you navigate through those things. And then a big piece of what we do is homebuyer education. So we want to be able to give people the tools so that they understand the buying process. I assume most of you are homeowners in here, and it is a hard process. It's really confusing. There's a lot of jargon. There's a lot of signing of paperwork, and you don't always understand what you're signing. So a big piece is making sure people are really understanding what the buying process entails and what they're really getting themselves into. And then also doing that financial piece, saving for a house, making sure you have reserves for if the water heater goes out, what do we do? So part of that is we're able to offer financial counseling to folks, also debt management and consolidation. This is a new arm for us. We recently acquired another nonprofit that was doing this. So if you have like a lot of debt and you want to like consolidate credit card debt, that's a big one, especially for young people like myself. We have lots of credit card debt. So we're able to basically consolidate that into a low payment that helps people really gain that financial freedom. And then we also do a program called individual development accounts, which is a 2-to-1 match. So basically for every dollar that you save, we match it up to $2, maxing out at $4,000. People can use that towards education, starting a business, or purchasing a home. So those are great services. And then the other thing that we do, thanks in part to Salt Lake City and other municipalities, is we're able to help people with the down payment assistance for their house and the closing costs. Those vary on the municipality and basically the restrictions of the funds, but they're usually somewhere around 20 to 25,000, and sometimes even more if you're like a first responder, what we call like our heroes. So like teachers, things like that. So sometimes they can be a little more. And then the fun stuff, which is what I do, is the community building and engagement. So I highlighted a couple of things on this slide because we do a ton. And Jan talked a little bit about it with our community capacity arm that we do. And that's where we really try to help you all as leaders in the community build up your skills, develop partnerships. If you're having a hard time building a relationship with like Salt Lake City or a department, or maybe a major business like Rocky Mountain Power, for instance, we have great relationships with a lot of folks, and we try to facilitate a lot of that. So that way, issues that you're seeing in your community, you guys can take charge of them, and we can support you in whatever that looks like. So that's a piece that's not on here, but we do a ton of that. A big piece is the community service projects that we do. So Jan mentioned we're doing Break Your Heart Out, which is an annual event for us. I think we're on year 5, and I should know that because I started the program when I came to the organization. But basically that is for elders in our community who need help getting their yards prepped for the winter. And so we deploy hundreds of volunteers all over the city. It's not restricted to the west side. The only requirement is that you're 65 and up. So if that's you or somebody you know or a neighbor and you notice it's getting hard for them to get out there and get their yards ready, let us know. We would love to help them. There's still time to get in for this year. And so I'm going to leave my card back there. So let me know, but it happens every November, and we do it the Saturday before Thanksgiving, just as a way to kick off the season, right? It's the season of giving back. And so this is our little way of giving back to the community. And then in August, we do what's called Paint Your Heart Out. which we've been doing that for 40 plus years, I'm sure. And that happens every August, and it is a free exterior home painting. So there is a little bit of a requirement for that. You either have to be over the age of 65, low income family, or living or caring for a person with a disability or a veteran. And so we go out, we do a home evaluation. It's a totally free service. We work with a professional paint company that goes out and does the evaluations. They work with you to choose your paint color if you want to change. And then we deploy the volunteers out to do it all in one day. And that's a really amazing event. The seniors who always take part in it, they're the best. And anyway, they touch your heart. So. And we're always looking for volunteer teams. That's a great way as you guys as a community council or community, if you want to give back to somebody in your community, it's a great opportunity to get out there and like bond together too. And then you heard in the video about YouthWorks. If you have any young people that you have relationships with and they're looking for any employment or leadership skills or social skills, we know coming out of COVID, a lot of youth have struggled with that. Send them our way. We can take them up to 18 years old, starting at 14. And it's a 10 to 16 week program, and we actually pay them a small stipend. So they make about $200 every 2 weeks, just like a job, right? So we're trying to prepare them for the workforce. So we teach them how to write a resume, how to interview, and then give them some soft employment skills like landscaping or other projects that staff come up with. It gets a little crazy sometimes, but that's a great program for that. And then if you really want to hone your leadership skills, the Westside Leadership Institute is a great way, especially as a community council. If you have a project you want to work on or an initiative, this is a great opportunity to take a 16-week, once a week for 3 hours and just really focus in on whatever that is and get support along the way. You actually get 3 continuing education credits from the University of Utah. And it's taught by a professor at the university and then a community member, because we're really focused on keeping it grounded in community issues. So who knows that better than you all? So come take that course. And then if you're really serious and you want to keep going, you can go on to our workshop class. It's a 10-week intensive on like various subjects from grant writing to developing a mission and vision to like how to read financial reports. And then if you're super, super serious about your project and you want to keep it going, you could take our startups class, which basically is a 12-month thing. And it just helps you kind of get started, like creating a small business or a nonprofit organization. Some great groups have kind of came out of that. So with that, I'm not going to talk about a real estate development because it's super complicated and somebody does that at the org and that's not me. And so I would talk about it, but it's not my area of expertise. But at this time, if anybody has any questions about any of the things that we offer, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, my email is here. Please take a picture of it. And I left some cards too. If you have anybody or questions or you have some crazy thing you're thinking about doing and you need support, let me know and I'd be happy to sit down and talk to you. Yes, Dan?
Can you give just a quick summary of you because that is one of the shining moments.
Yeah. Yeah, it's through a ton of partnership. I actually live in Guadalupe neighborhood, that little house, that was me on my off time. I'm an actor, if you didn't know. You know, I don't think there's not a house that NeighborWorks hasn't touched in some way in our neighborhood. And that's through partnerships with the city, partnerships with Salt Lake City Police Department too. When NeighborWorks initially went into Guadalupe neighborhood, they were actually going to rezone it to be like for infrastructure, right? For like commercial. So they were going to completely just get rid of it, right? They didn't see any investment. And so NeighborWorks went in and strategically purchased a lot of the blighted homes. And what's really kind of sad right now is the fact that the I-15 freeway expansion that is proposed, part of that is going to affect some of those homes that we built up to be affordable. And those neighbors are being affected right now. So we're working with them to figure out how they mitigate some of those impacts that they're destined to experience, even those a mile out, right? Even myself, in terms of sound, pollution, things like that. But getting back to the question, most of it was through that strategic partnership. We had to go in and like make sure we weren't violating any laws for like squatters' rights, because that was happening a lot, and purchase those houses and then basically develop them to be affordable. And it's a lot of those homes are grant funded through funds through the city, like CDBG dollars and things like that, where we're able to purchase them and then build. And obviously it was much cheaper to build back then. And so a lot of those houses are still around and a lot of those families are still around. So we really appreciate it. And then the home improvement grants have been really helpful to kind of help those who were already in the neighborhood who really just needed to fix up their houses, either like roofing or new plumbing, things like that, to stay there. Yeah, so it's been a great time. Yes.
Are you able to access federal dollars like new programs?
You know, we can. We try to stay away from federal dollars because they always come with some crazy restrictions and the reporting requirements are really hard. So we try to access mostly local dollars, or we're able to raise dollars. So we're part of a national network of about 240 other organizations across the US and Puerto Rico. And they are still one of the only housing organizations that is congressionally funded. So they roll down funds from the feds to us. And so we're able to leverage some of those dollars to do projects like real estate development stuff, or to help subsidize like our community building and engagement. Questions? Cool. Well, if not, like I said, reach out to me, even just to say hi. Always willing to lend a helping hand anywhere. So thanks so much, Jan, for having us.
Oh, yeah. By the way, this was kind of a holiday today for Jasmine, and graciously went ahead and came in. No, well, I just want to say that I think that Neighbor is looking over here. I think that NeighborWorks is a tremendous force for good in our community. And no. And as I say, the Guadalupe neighborhood story, I think is just one of the great things that ever happened to Salt Lake. And of course, we're a little bit distressed about the I-15 situation. My understanding the last time I heard was that UDOT was not going to take any homes.
They're not proposing,
but they're going to come close so that there could be.
I think the biggest thing, we recently had a meeting with all the residents who are going to be directly impacted. And what I heard from many of them, especially those who were around in 2000, when they were expanding it for the Olympics, is the internal damage to their houses that they're nervous about. And I think that's what we're nervous about.
Right.
And some of the stories they talked about was like the round the clock working.
Right.
So 24/7, because they had such a strict deadline. We're hoping that through partnership with the city and our city council leaders, that we can advocate to make sure that we put mitigation efforts in place so that 24/7 isn't happening. Structural damage, if any, is like taken care of at the expense of the state, because it would be their fault. So yeah. Yeah.
Those have to be, their house may not be.
Right.
At the point, their life would be. Moving not allowing pain for them to move away.
Yes.
Noise, the vibration, all these pollutions, lights and everything else. Mitigating factors and also making sure that they're left full when the project's over. So we just, we're in the process right now, just got.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate it. And all of you can still help too in the effort. The comment period doesn't close until the 13th. So if you're interested, go online to the UDOT website. Oh, thanks, Hannah.
So we will make a note of promoting that, but rake your heart out.
Mhm.
So we want to promote that as well
Yes,
and find,
please.
and also there's a way for people to donate and support your
Yeah.
organization as well.
Yes, I forgot that. I'm a nonprofit person, but thanks to Jan. Yeah, if you're ever wanting to support, go online, right on the top of our webpage, nwsaltlake.org. There's a donate button, and everything helps, anything helps, and we always appreciate it. So, and we'll be sure to make sure you get a personal invite from me to the annual meeting next year.
Right.
So,
Thank you so
yeah,
much,
of
Jasmine.
course. Thanks, Jan.
And we'll see you at the next.
Yes, I hope
cheer
so.
meeting.
Guys.
Okay. We're just gonna have a quick interlude before we talk about squirrels, which is gonna be somewhat amusing, but also educational. So Detective Fallows, can you pop in and
Yep.
just tell us about crime in the neighborhood, or maybe lack of crime, we hope. And we can hear from you and
Yep. Can y'all hear me okay?
yes.
Perfect. All righty. Well, I'm Detective Sam Fallows. I'm the community liaison detective for districts 5, 6, and 7. So of course Yellcrest is in District 6. We have part of my job is to kind of report on the crime stats for the neighborhood, like Jan said. And so we'll just give an update on that and then just highlight a couple things. And then if anybody has any questions, then please feel free to either put them in the chat or just shout them out when I'm done in the if you're in person. So everything I talk about can be found on our website, slcpd.com. And for the online folks, I'm going to put some links and stuff into the chat there for everybody. So for the crime statistics, when we're looking at Yellcrest, so the Salt Lake City reports on all part 1 and part 2 crimes. Those are everything from aggravated assaults and homicides to liquor law violations and minor assaults, vandalisms, things like that. So it's a wide array of different crime types. So for the Yellcrest neighborhood, we had 11 of those reported in October. The top ones we kind of saw were all kind of property related, which is what we do see quite a bit up in this area. We had 6 larceny and thefts, 3 vandalisms, and a burglary. So, and we're kind of coming into that season now too, where motor vehicle theft is going to kind of start rising just because of the cold and people warm up their vehicles. So I want to just give a reminder to, like, if you're warming up your vehicle, please do it with either an auto start type feature, or if you don't have then just please be in your vehicle with it. And then also last year we had quite a few vehicle thefts where key fobs were getting left in vehicles overnight and then they were getting broken into and then getting stolen. So just make sure you're taking out anything of value from your vehicle, things like that. So those are the major updates I have. Does anybody have any questions that I can answer for them? Either online or let me look at the chat. Sorry, I don't have a chat. I can't hear the question if that was a question. Sorry. Jan might have to tell me what it was.
I was just mentioning the idea that they can also break in your car and take your old garage door opener.
Oh yeah.
And they come back the next day or the next night when you're not there and they have access to your car or they access to your house. So that's why I make sure you lock it and you put it in the garage or take that out of the car because they'll steal that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Dan, for that. Also, 100% like make sure your outside lights are on. My suggestion is all night long, have them on all the time. The motion lights are fine, but you kind of want your house or your place where you live to be a deterrent from afar. So obviously we don't want our neighbors to get broken into, but we want our house lit up. We want our neighborhood lit up. So if someone is looking around trying to find a target, they'll go to a different street or to a different area because your house is lit up. That's kind of the idea behind it. So the motion lights can work and they can kind of spook people, but sometimes they're already like in the middle of the process by the time the light comes on and they just hurry and finish up and then go. So, and on that note too, if you guys see anything suspicious, you know, late at night, someone walking around checking door handles, looking into cars, walking up driveways, and you know that's not the person that lives there, you know, call our dispatch. If they're like getting into a car, like call 911. But if it's just a suspicious person doing the suspicious activity, we're looking for what they're doing, that's suspicious, then, you know, please call that in, because we can always, you know, there's a couple of positives that come out of it in my mind. Number one, if we're available, we can respond a lot quicker and, you know, making contact with the individual. But if we're not readily available, just due to call backlog and things like that, we will respond eventually to the call. And either way, it gets an officer into your neighborhood. It gets an officer through, you know, driving through, which basically kind of works like an extra patrol essentially for the neighborhood. So kind of a win-win in my opinion. So if you're seeing anything, you know, don't hesitate to call it in. You're not going to keep us from something important. We have, like I said, we prioritize our calls. So, you know, that's what our job is to kind of respond to those things as well. So feel free to call it in. But if there's no other questions, I'll give it back to you, Jen.
Children under the age of 18 in Salt Lake City, and if so, what is the time, and is it just on the weekend?
Did you hear that?
No, sorry. Can you repeat it for me?
Is there a nighttime curfew for children under 18 in Salt Lake City?
That's a good question. I don't know the exact answer to that question. I'm going to guess that there probably is under our city code, under our, like the Salt Lake City code, but I don't know the exact answer to that. So I can find that and get back to Jan, or get back to you directly. You can reach out to me. Is there a reason you're asking? Like, is there something going on that's prompting you to ask that?
Well, sometimes there's a group of young teenagers, 12 to 14 years old, out in the neighborhood on weeknights at 11:30, 12:30 at night. And there's been some concern of what they're doing.
Right, so we can take this offline and we will work with, yeah, we'll get back to you because, you know, I think Dan, I've even told Dan about some of the mischief makers across the street in Bonneville Elementary School, but just hang out there and do awful things. But they've kind of. 11 PM curfew for 11 PM for kids under 16.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's probably between 11 and midnight. So that sounds right. For anybody under 16, anybody under 18 is probably midnight, most likely. And obviously 18 or older can be out as late as they want, but that makes sense. Yeah, I would say that's super accurate.
Okay. Great. Hey, thank you. Thank you for all you're doing. Thanks for your service.
All right. You guys have a great night.
All right. Thank you. We want to get on to Ellen. And how many of you have squirrels in your backyard? Okay, unanimously, everybody's raising your hands. People are probably raising your hands online. Honestly, they're entertaining and maddening. But I'm just gonna have Ellen, I'm gonna turn it over to Ellen. Ellen, tell us about yourself. Tell us about the project. We're thrilled about Squirrel Fest and how we can participate. So please take over the show here.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you. Hi, everyone in the room and online. So now for something completely different to talk about. So I work for the Natural History Museum of Utah and have a little presentation I can give you about squirrels. And I'm gonna make it big. No, I don't. Yeah, I just, well, here we go. Sorry, it switched sides on me. And then I've got these little screens. Okay, sorry. So, okay, I'm going to talk about a squirrel survey that we've got run. And let me move my little pictures here. Okay, so I am the citizen science manager for the Natural History Museum of Utah. And I work very closely with the museum's vertebrate zoology department on this squirrel project. Dr. Eric Rickert, Katrina Dierig, and we've got a volunteer, Patrice Cornelli, who is a retired University of Utah statistician and helps us with some of this project as well. And so the presentation I'm going to give you is a mixture of our cumulative work because I could not do it without them. So the citizen science program at the Natural History Museum is based in community action and community engagement, and it's all about connecting people with science in various ways to learn more about the place that they're living. It would also contribute to exciting and interesting research that's happening here in the city and locally. So for us, with squirrels, I've got several different projects, but our most popular one lately has been a project focusing on the eastern fox squirrel. And this is a squirrel I suspect you see around your home daily, especially for those of you living on this side of the city. The eastern fox squirrel is not native to Salt Lake City. It is native to eastern and midwestern portions of the US, as you can see on the map here. The brown stars that are on this map represent places where they've been introduced over time, and so have established populations in portions of California and the Pacific Northwest, and they're also in Missoula, Montana, Denver, Colorado, places like that. They were never in Utah at all until now. This is what they look like. They're very large tree squirrels, really big bushy tails. Their coloration looks sort of like a fox in a way, especially the shaping of their tails. They are excellent climbers, very acrobatic, and they're not shy squirrels. The native squirrel species that you'd most likely be seeing here in the city are these two on the screen. They're native to this part of the country. The American red squirrel is a tree squirrel as well, like the fox squirrel is, but it's much smaller. And they have white bellies instead of orange bellies. They make a completely different sound, and they prefer pine trees, whereas fox squirrels prefer deciduous trees. The other squirrel here on the side is called a rock squirrel. They have similar sizing to a fox squirrel, their bodies do. Their tails are much tinier and less fluffy and long, and they don't climb trees. They're ground squirrels. Occasionally they might be scrambling up on something that's not too high, but they're always hanging out on the ground, most likely. So those are the native species that are in the area. But the fox squirrel, so many questions around it. And so, as I mentioned, it's not native to this part of the country, and fox squirrels have been established in places like Denver and California, especially for 100 years, potentially more. But they were never in Salt Lake City and Utah at all, likely because of some pretty obvious geographic barriers when we think of a tree squirrel species being able to travel from one place that it's established to another. It requires things like trees, and that there's not contiguous tree forests from places that they would natively be hanging out, or even places like Colorado. There's some large geographic barriers for them to just come over this way on their own. But in 2011-ish, fox squirrels were first reported to be in Salt Lake City along the Jordan River, and the museum wasn't aware of it at the time, but when we became aware of it, our curator of vertebrate zoology, Eric Rickert, was very intrigued. He's got friends that work with DWR. He had heard about the fox squirrel from Division of Wildlife here at in Utah, and so initially we started deploying some crowdsourced data collection using a platform called iNaturalist. For those that are not familiar with iNaturalist, it's a photo-based app you can have on your phone. Essentially, you take a picture of a wild living thing or a dead wild thing, and it will help you identify what it is. So a plant, an animal, some sort of fungus species. It's pretty awesome. It helps you learn about what you're seeing. But then that photo also becomes a record of that thing at that time and that location. So it becomes a data point. You're learning about something, but then you're also contributing to this crowdsourced data collection and biodiversity record. And so we started using iNaturalist to track squirrels in Utah. And the first iNaturalist observation of a fox squirrel in Salt Lake City or in Utah at all was made in 2013 along the Jordan River. There was more than one squirrel living in Salt Lake City, most likely at this time, but nobody had made an iNaturalist observation of it. So this was sort of the beginning of some of this data collection for us. And again, this was somebody we don't know, somebody who just was taking a photo of a squirrel and putting it on this platform, which is exciting. In 2016, we were up to 4 observations around the valley. The blue dots on the map are showing where those were taken. 2017, we're up to 21 total observations. By 2018, this is when the museum started getting involved and we started talking about it. We had it on our website. Hey, if you see a squirrel, take a picture, put it on iNaturalist. And so the records, the observations started to increase. Again, clustered around specific areas of the city. It also includes the first observation of Emigration Canyon, which if I have time, I can maybe tell you a story about. So 2019, then we start to see their range expanding farther and farther. So then we get to 2020. And by this point, we're starting to ask questions like, okay, looking at the map, we're seeing all these new dots. We've got new observations popping up in Provo, up Little Cottonwood Canyon. So what's happening in between? Are there squirrels there? There's no observations there. Is it because squirrels aren't living in those places, or is it because no one's there using iNaturalist and making an observation? We're not sure. So let's change our survey method. And so in 2020, we created our own fox squirrel survey, using a different online platform that people can report to. And the thing that's different about this survey was that people can enter information about the squirrel that they're seeing, but they could also be in a place where they don't see a squirrel. And you can enter that information to us too, because it's really helpful for us to understand, is a squirrel living there or not living there? That null data, meaning we're not seeing squirrels in that place, is very useful information as well. So on the museum's website, now you can access a squirrel survey through your phone or on a computer, where you can enter information about squirrels that you are seeing or not seeing in your neighborhood. And following we saw a pretty big bump in data, essentially. And to really kick things off, I can't take credit for this. One of my colleagues, Eric Rickard, came up with the term Squirrel Fest. It's not like, for those of you who have come to the museum for things like Bug Fest, Dino Fest, come in the building and we have tables and fun stuff and you can eat bugs. It's not like that. It really is just a fest in name. It's a data collection extravaganza, where we're really encouraging people around the state to look for squirrels, and whether you're seeing them or not, we'd like to have data on that. And so Squirrel Fest obviously became a pretty big boost in our records of squirrel observations in the state. And so in 2020, we had significantly more observations of squirrels than we'd ever seen before in lots of new places, and started to get interesting observations about where things were not hanging out. Definite expansion east into the Wasatch, and then more observations happening down south, like in Spanish Fork. And then in 2021, we started to see multiple observations in places where squirrels had not been reported at all. Magna, west of into Tooele, and then more in Utah County. And then there was also this one observation that somebody made in Cedar City. And there still is just that one observation down there. So what a mystery. we also have some theories on that. And then Squirrel Fest last year produced some, again, wonderful data. It's been, we're filling out and having a better idea of where these individuals are living. But of course, we still have lots of question marks about where things could be in the state. Scientifically speaking, to be observing a species as it's fairly newly introduced to an ecosystem is very interesting. And I'll get into a little bit of the things that we're finding, but it's not often that you're around, like as a scientist, when there's a new species of something that's like, hey, I'm here, observe me as I become part of your community. And so it's been a really unique and interesting time to learn about this species as it adapts to the environment that we have here in northern Utah. So what are we finding? This is some of the data that's been coming from our statistician volunteer, Patty, based on all of the questions that we're asking and these variables that are considered. We've got almost 34,000 data points. As of February 2023, Squirrel Fest happens in December, which is coming up in just a couple of weeks, and I'll speak more on that. So guaranteed we have much more than this. Our data form is open year-round. We're collecting data on squirrels year-round. The variables that we're looking at, things that we're most interested in collecting information on, include the ecology of the area that a squirrel is living in or not living in. So if you go to look for a squirrel and it's not there, we're also curious about what's the ecology like there. What are the tree species that you're seeing? Is the canopy touching, or are they far apart? Are there utility lines around? Are there fence lines around? Is there quick access to water? Are there food sources nearby that might be of interest to a squirrel? We're also curious to know what their behaviors are. What are you noticing them doing? What are they interacting with other squirrels? Native species, non-native species. We get a lot of stories about people's dogs interacting with squirrels and other pets. And then, of course, the demographic information. How many are you seeing? And are they there or are they not? And preliminary analysis of this data that we've been collecting over the past several years, we do still look at iNaturalist too. So we're combining all of that information. But some of this information fits very well with what a fox squirrel is genetically, like how they exist as a squirrel in the world. They prefer, as I mentioned, deciduous trees. They like trees that are losing their leaves in the wintertime. In their native ranges, it's the same here. That's what they prefer. But they also live in places where they're mixed trees. So if you've got pine trees or evergreens in your yard, they're interested in those as well, but more interested if there's deciduous trees also. Red squirrels, which is the native tree squirrel species, they prefer mixed and evergreen habitats, especially when fox squirrels are not there. Those two squirrel species aren't competing for food resources. They don't eat the same things. Red squirrels, the native species, do. They're the ones that are collecting pine cones, caching them around. There are lots of places in the city where red squirrels do not live, and there are very established pine trees just loaded with cones, and fox squirrels live there, who clearly are not eating those cones, which means that the red squirrel's not there. Fox squirrels much prefer to have some canopy, meaning trees that they can travel between easily up high, because they are such excellent acrobatic climbers. And they have a huge preference for sites with utility lines. Again, it's like a highway for squirrels. And interesting, there are parts of, not in Salt Lake City, but when you start to go south and west of the city where utility lines are starting to be buried, and way fewer squirrels are seen in some of those neighborhoods. They also have younger trees, and so not canopies and trees that aren't established. And so they're, again, the squirrels can't just like traipse above us in those neighborhoods. And that makes sense, as I said, with their native forest habitat, they're interacting with these deciduous forests in the Midwest and in eastern portions of the US. Salt Lake City looks a little different, but they're making it work. Definitely on roofs, yeah, definitely. But they're incredibly acrobatic and fascinating to watch. And I just put that in because I like those pictures. So certain local habitats that they're really, of course, appreciating, they're making their homes in our backyards. People are asking us all the time about squirrels. Can I get rid of them? What's happening? They're part of the ecosystem here now. They're part of our life in the city, and there's really not much that we can do to get rid of them, truly. And so considering ways that you can better be a neighbor to a squirrel is something that we encourage. But we're a bunch of natural history nerds, so that's not really our wheelhouse. But they're preferring places like yards, most likely because people have bird feeders and gardens and fruit trees, things that are of interest to them. This is just a graph to showcase deciduous trees, fox squirrels being in blue, deciduous trees only, evergreen and mixed, or evergreen and deciduous trees are those two graphs on the side, and then evergreen only. Of course, we don't have a lot of areas in the city here where there are evergreen only zones, but they vastly prefer those two habitats. Sometimes they make homes in places where you wouldn't expect. This is a pine tree that is in the International Peace Gardens along the Jordan River. And it's not showing up very nicely on the screen, but it's a very, very large dray is what a squirrel nest is called. Usually they're putting together deciduous leaves to make a little home for themselves. And this is a place where it's a bunch of ponderosa needles and some sort of fungal thing happening on this tree that the squirrels have turned into a whole little palace. So they're opportunists as well. The survey has been really providing some very interesting insights into squirrel behavior and people taking time to note interesting things that they're noticing squirrels doing, how they're traveling on roofs and power lines, and interacting with various species in the city. Maybe it's up squirrels, maybe it's a hawk that lives in the neighborhood that the squirrel is not afraid to be near. Coyotes that are actively hunting. Fox squirrels up in the avenues is a common sighting, or we get surveys that tell us about those observations. And then of course, lots of things about squirrels eating things. Sometimes people want squirrels to be in their yard eating things, and other times people don't want them to be in their yard eating things. The most commonly observed behaviors that we hear from people on relate to climbing, running and jumping, and foraging and feeding, and then being followed by chasing and fighting. And then this last one says caching, which means storing food. And then some observations of squirrel mating, which is interesting. Squirrels are rodents. Rodents' teeth, especially specifically their incisors, their front teeth are constantly growing, constantly. And to wear those teeth down, they need to be chewing on things that are hard. It's an important part of what a rodent's life is, to be chewing things, to keep their teeth worn down to the appropriate size. Squirrels love to chew on stuff. Maybe it's parts of your house. We often are asked about what squirrels are eating and sometimes people say, what can I feed them? Some people want to be feeding squirrels. Well, then other times their neighbor is like, stop feeding squirrels. I don't want them around. So there's a lot of mixed, and again, not a social scientist. So there's some intriguing elements to all of this. We're getting some neighborhood emotions that come to play with this, but squirrels they eat, they're omnivores. So they eat a mixture of foods, including lots of seeds and nuts, and buds on leaves and plants. They will eat insects and bird eggs and potentially other small mammals like a baby squirrel, other things like that. But the most important food for them are hard tree nuts. And so if you happen to be somebody that wanted to feed a squirrel, and again, this isn't something that the museum has a official stance on necessarily, but we would strongly recommend it being a very hard tree nut, because that's what's going to help ground their teeth down. And you can see this picture here on your left side. There's a healthy squirrel skull with its teeth, and then the one on the other side, it's not showing up quite so well, but the top teeth are actually curling down up back into the squirrel's mouth, and the bottom ones are coming around. They're not connecting with each other. That means that squirrel was unable to chew things that were hard enough for it to grind its teeth down. And that kills squirrels and rodents in general. And so we found, we have specimens at the museum of fox squirrels that were found in the city that have evidence of that, meaning they're not having the right, they don't have the right diet here. Which again, scientifically speaking, as a vertebrate zoologist, which I am not, but I work with them, they find very, very interesting. That means that the urban environment is not, it has some readily available food. Of course, when we have gardens, we have fruit trees, bird feeders, awesome places for, they do. That's great to get some calories, but isn't always necessarily the ideal thing for their longevity. So just an interesting point. Okay, Squirrel Fest is the event that's happening in December. As I said, not an actual festival, data collection festival. It's about 11-day stretch. Our flyer wasn't quite done, so I made I made a special one for you here. So Squirrel Fest 2023 is December 2nd through the 10th. And during that window is our big push to get data entered into our Fox Squirrel survey. And so thanks in advance if this is something that's of interest to you and you'd like to record some squirrel observations, or if you happen to know people who would be interested, please share the word with them. And especially if you've got friends or families who are outside of the city limits who would be interested or able to provide make some squirrel observations for us, we would sure be grateful to have that information. I brought, I'll put my cards on the back counter as well if you're interested to talk more about this. And I also brought a few yard signs that have this squirrel face on it. And it says "See squirrels." Tell us about it. So, and I have I think about 9 of them. So you're welcome to all of them if you'd like. And those could be up year round if you were so inclined. Or if you've got some room in your yard when the election's done and you want to promote some squirrels, I guarantee you people will stop and look at it. People will stop and look. Yeah.
Yeah, Ellen, question. You didn't mention anything about lawns. I've been reading that they are also starting to destroy lawns.
Interesting.
Have you seen that?
I don't know. Yes, the question was about squirrels destroying lawns and if we've seen any about that. And I don't know. I'll need to ask Patty to look back. Certainly not something we were tracking initially because not something we were thinking of. I know. Yeah. Get rid of your lawn, but water your trees. That's what the city says. Well, I don't know about the get rid of your lawn part, but water your trees. So yeah, but that's a good question, and I will ask. And at the end of Squirrel Fest, usually in February, when we've had a month to digest some things and run some statistical analysis, we have an online presentation where we showcase the data. We call it our Fox Squirrel Data Showcase, because why not keep it performative, and people love it. And it's a wonderful time to join online and ask questions and share some new data. And so lawns, I'll put that in the list. Any other squirrel questions I can answer for you? Yeah. Well, I will. Yes. Well, I will say 2 things on that front. If you have squirrels in your neighborhood that you don't want around anymore, I am very serious when I say the museum does accept squirrel specimens where they would not live but exist forever as part of the museum's collection. And so that's an option. And we do get squirrels that are expired from people, and then they come to the museum and we're looking at things like their skulls. Fox squirrel bones, fox squirrels specifically, their bones glow in the dark, which is a wild sort of thing. With certain lighting, and we do test on various things that are found in their bodies. So it's the whole thing is utilized for science. So that's an option, but I know it's not for everybody to do. But I also will say to your point, Jan, about relocation, like the reason that fox squirrels are here could very well be because somebody did that. They had a squirrel they didn't want somewhere else, and it was purposefully introduced here by a human. The chances that squirrels came here on their own were very slim. It was the chances that a human introduced squirrels were very high. And that's sort of a wild thing to think about because they're so much part of our life now. And so we strongly discourage people from moving species from one place to another. And you know, we do see observations of them up Immigration Canyon, specifically in other places where people will take them, they'll trap them and then take them up the canyons to let them go. And that truly is just potentially introducing them into a new habitat, which is expanding their range, which again, scientifically is maybe interesting, but not a healthy choice for an ecosystem. Or or it could be like a slow death for them because they don't have food up there, which is another thing. Oh, yes.
That explosion population.
Yeah, so it's a good question. And so that's part of the data that we're collecting on. We're really interested in, yeah, are they negatively impacting species here? They don't seem to be. And aside from maybe people. And so they're as of now, they're not considered invasive species. They're just an introduced species in the state of Utah because they're just kind of hanging out, doing their thing. And there are theories that maybe the city can't sustain them long-term and the population could crash. There are also lots of interesting, they're very inbred, meaning that they were likely introduced by like one or two individuals potentially, and they've just been sort of procreating from those same individuals. And so genetically, they show some interesting traits of inbreeding, which also is not healthy for long-term sustainability. But then, I don't know, maybe people are driving down the newly expanded I-15 with squirrels in their boat and they don't know, squirrels are popping out and who knows? But the point is they're here. So thank you for allowing me some time to talk about squirrels. Yeah.
Well, I hope you all have something entertaining to talk about during Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners. You will be the world's experts on squirrels. So I know I'm planning on doing that. So I hope that you are too. That was fascinating, Ellen. Thank you so much. So we've got our two government representatives. We've got Hannah up next, representing the mayor's office, and Dan. So if you would just tag team and come up after they're reminding us that they want us kicked out by 8 o'clock or.
Yeah, I'll be fast. Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah from the mayor's office. I have some homework from last meeting that I wanted to follow up on. Someone asked, and I'm not sure who, if we could look into lowering the speed limits in school zones, because now that the speed limits on residential streets is 20 miles an hour, the school zone is the same, making it more or less ineffective. Well, I'm sure it's still effective to some level, but so the good news is that the transportation division is already looking into that citywide. So I can hopefully bring back more updates as that progresses, because they realized the need for that. Yeah, so that was from last meeting, but wanted to let everyone know that the ACE fund in the mayor's office just opened up at the beginning of the month. ACE stands for Arts, Culture, and Events. So it's a grant fund through the mayor's office that funds all sorts of events throughout Salt Lake City, big and small, from $500 up to $10,000. There are a couple of info sessions coming up, 2 more in this month. If you are interested in applying and want to put together an application, it is a really competitive process. So I would encourage you to go to one of these info sessions to learn more about it and figure out how to put together your application. We fund, lots of community council events through those and, Salt Lake Pride and the marathon and everything like that. So it's very fun. Yeah, so there's a couple flyers for that over on the table. I have a number of flyers over there. Let's see, another update just quickly on the 13th South speed bumps. I know that construction has taken way longer than anticipated. The rain has not helped that cement cure. Luckily, they are working on the very last speed bump right now. I should say speed cushion, that's really what they are. Hopefully you guys have driven them and seen the wheel cutouts. I think they're pretty smooth, pretty nice. Hopefully you guys feel like they're okay. That last speed bump is going in on 13th South and should be wrapped up by Monday. So 13 South will be fully open to traffic on Monday, which is great. They will be starting I think there's 3 speed humps going in on 21st East, which is the street here, basically from the library over to Browning, which I think is the 2nd street in after 13th South. So they'll be starting on that Browning to 13th South section next week. But they're looking to get that done hopefully early December if the weather can cooperate with us and we can quickly get those done. Sorry, say that again. Yes, so each of the cushions, comes with a sign that says speed bump and then the go 20 miles an hour over these, which I have done and it's great. So you don't hardly have to adjust your speed as long as you're already going the speed limit. So let's see. On 21st East. Yeah, I'm actually not sure what the speed limit is out here. It might be 25, might be 30, but okay. That's something that the transportation division is doing too, is trying to make that more consistent across the board, right? Because there's some of our thoroughfares that are 30, some are 25, some are 40. So looking at ways to. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully those speed cushions will do a good job reminding people that they're in a neighborhood now. There's school children and library patrons and all sorts of folks walking around. So yeah, if anyone has questions about that, please let me know, or I can connect you with the project manager. Let's see, a quick homelessness update. The winter overflow shelter in West Valley opened last week. So those beds came online. Folks were actually given tours and given the opportunity to be driven down there if they wanted a bed. So there are about 100 beds currently available there, which is great. I think full capacity was like 170-ish beds. 170. Yeah, so some of those have filled up, but there's still some available, which means that throughout the city, we're going to be working really hard to get folks into beds because it's important for. Okay, great. Let's see. And then a couple of other just exciting news about some grants that the city just recently received. Salt Lake City received a $1 million grant from Bloomberg. It's a public art grant to focus specifically on the Great Salt Lake. So that's really exciting because we will be getting some new public art in our city, which we love. And then it'll be focused on something really important that is important to our city. The city also was awarded a $2.2 million grant for wetlands and habitat preservation along the south shoreline of the Great Salt Lake, which is really exciting. A lot of those funds will be used to acquire that land along the shoreline so that it can be preserved. And then a good amount of it will go to our public utilities teams for the management of those spaces and to make sure that water is properly being diverted to the Great Salt Lake, which is really important. So yeah, that's, just exciting news, I think. Great to see these funding opportunities for our city. So does anyone have any questions for me? Awesome. Great. Well, there's lots of flyers over here about some upcoming events and everything, ACE Fund. So yeah.
Thanks. And Jan, thanks for having Jasmine with NeighborWorks. They do some wonderful work. And we work well with them often on a lot of projects with the city because they do some great work across the board. So it's a great organization. And if you can support them, please do. And next Halloween, just take out a few squirrels and then just take out their bones and just litter your yard with the bones. And I think you'll probably keep the trick-or-treaters away and you can have your candy yourself. I also want to, shout out about the school zones. Last year I tried to get a bill passed through the state house on putting cameras on school zones and construction zones, and then we kind of said, okay, how about just school zones? And it got to the committees because the appropriations chair lead said, if you want your projects funded, you need to make sure this project gets through the committee and into the House. Well, that happened, but then it died miserably in the House. But we're going to continue pushing that idea of putting radar cameras in school zones, and those cameras would be to take a picture of the license plate, the back license plate, and give a ticket out to the vehicle owner. It's not a point system, it's just the vehicle owner gets the ticket. They don't look at the driver, they don't care anything about that, just the owner. I'm not sure why that failed, but one guy kept on saying it's the China state, and boy, you're gonna be tracking us. I'm thinking, everyone has their phone, everyone knows where you are anyways, why not? But we'll keep on pushing that right now with the legislators. I'm trying to work with a couple guys to see if we get it further moving. We do have some big hurdles to meet, because there's some guys that are very strongly against that. But we'll keep pushing that. Thanks about the local historic district. Currently, voting ends on the 15th. So if you're in those neighborhoods, you have to have the 15th, there your ballot in by the 15th. The others will come up in the near future. Go to Hannah's point about the homeless side of the house. So we have an ordinance in the books, and the city is always not been enforcing it. This is no camping in public areas, is because we haven't had any beds to put them in resource centers. Our resource centers have basically been fully booked up. Every bed's been taken since the winter overflow last year. The winter overflow this year, we have 600 beds. Last year, we didn't have nearly that many beds. So we're having over 600, and we're also coming online much sooner than we have in the past. So we've gotten better every year with the winter overflow shelters. And this year, to start with, the West Valley just opened up their beds, the 170 beds there. The resource centers are all on their flex, which means that the Pamela, I think, has 75 beds, Gail Miller, and the other place has 50 beds each. Those count to it. So now we have additional beds. We have beds available, over 100 beds available. So now we can enforce the ordinance of no camping in public spaces. They've been enforcing that for the past few weeks, because that's when the West Valley place opened up. And so we're telling people who are camping, you got to pick up your stuff. You got 5 minutes. You got to move. We'll take you to a shelter. We'll take you to detox. We'll take you wherever you want to go, but you can't stay here. You got to move. And that doesn't mean that you move from that side of the street to the other side of the street. You got to go. You got to find another place. So a lot of them are at this point right now, mixed reviews. Most of them are saying, I'm just going to move. No, don't want to go to shelters. There are some that want to go to shelters, and they've actually also arrested a few people. And I think they extradited someone to Idaho who had a warrant on the arrest. So they're making moves that way, and they will continue to do this until if all the beds are taken up, then they won't be enforcing that, because they can't, that's against the law, constitutional. But they are pushing forward that. What we have going for us is, this is the West Valley just opened up with 170 beds. The homeless resource centers will flex it up another 175 beds. Sandy will open up probably this next mid-December is when they're telling us they're going to open up. They're going to have about 160 beds, and that's for the medically vulnerable population. And that medically vulnerable population probably will probably relieve some of the people in the resource centers and move them to the medically vulnerable area. They have a lot of, as the name is, the medically vulnerable. They have a lot more troubles. So Sandy will be taking those. The city loaned Sandy $2 million to start that place up, because we knew it was so important. The detox center has got 50 beds now. They're actually starting to take people, and that also is from the police will also say, hey, we'll also take you to detox. And they have a van, they have the services to take someone. You don't just tell, hey, go to the resource center, it's down in West Valley, find your own way down. No, they have a van that takes them down there. And that can work 24 hours a day. And then there's the youth, VOA Youth. VOA is Volunteers of America. They have a youth for young kids between 16 and 24 or 23. They're going from 30 beds to 50 beds. We bumped it up. We'll be out here shortly. Yeah, thanks. They're bumping their numbers up to 50. We did it last winter. We're doing it this winter. And the reason why we had to do it this winter is because we're waiting for the paperwork to do it permanently to 50 beds. They're going to ask to do it permanently for 50 beds year round, because they see the need there, not just in the winter months. So in total, there'll be close to 600 beds. This does not include 600 bed count, doesn't include the 50 mobile called temporary shelter community, 50 mobile units that we're putting in across. That's in addition to the 600. We're hoping the RFP will get approved here shortly, and then those will be people will be flowing into that. That again will be a place for someone to stay with a locked door, 4 walls, electricity, and it's theirs. It's not like a resource center where you have to check in every morning. And that we're looking at as a transition. That also, in 6 months, the state's going to take it over because the state bought those modular units, and the state's is looking for a place to go. They've been looking for the last year because we've been working with them. The city's been working with them on finding locations, and the state's got that responsibility. And we're going to learn from this program when we go there, the other place. So today we had now I'm back up to today we had a press conference with the governor, Mayor Mendenhall, Mayor Wilson, Mayor Lang from West Valley was there, another Wayne Niederhauser and we were at the West Valley Receiving Center. Very nice place. It's an old liquor store. It's perfect. It's a great location. They got the shower. They have like a shower van with 8 or 9 showers there and bathrooms up just outside the facility for the residents. And it's 24/7. Prior, Mill Creek when they had the resource centers, they were not 24/7. They were only 12 hours. So we were busing people in every night and busing them out every morning. These are 24/7, so they can stay there. You don't have to move people around. They will be with their stuff. They have cubby holes of things. They got food. They have services there to take care of them. So there's a lot moving on the homeless front. And then the other side, Village, should be coming up in the springtime. They're already starting their processing of individuals that will move into those sections with whether it's mental health or substance use issues or other reasons why they were prior incarcerated, to get them into the other side Village, and that will open up in the springtime. Their land's already. They just need to start building the units. And then the Affordable Housing Initiative, we talked about that last night at the City Council meeting. If you listen to that, great. Otherwise, we had a great discussion. A lot of questions on that one. Two things again, the 3 and 4 plexes, but also the homeownership. The homeownership, I'm worried about homeownership across the city at all levels and in all housing choices. And so we had a couple desires to increase the propensity for homeownership instead of rentals. So we changed the incentives for home ownership to increase the okay. Yeah. So we're increasing the incentives to build homeowners places for sale by places for rent. We increased it in the single family zones from 80% AMI to 100% AMI to increase that opportunity for people to buy places to buy instead of to rent. Because I want to make sure we do homeownership across the board. I failed on the 3 and 4 plexes. I thought I'd get at least more than just 1 vote, but I only got myself. I thought I was going to have someone else vote, but I didn't. And I'm pushing still to have a little more thoughtful discussion, but I'm not sure if that's going to go anywhere else. So thank you. That's all I got. Sorry, my time's up. So thanks, everybody.
Okay, we're going to close it out, and we look forward to seeing you in December. And thanks for coming. Have a great Thanksgiving.